Hi guys, I'm Dana Al-Hanbali and this is Something to Consider. We often talk about filmmaking as a craft, the cameras, the scripts, the edits, but for some people it's less about mechanics and more about something innate. The need to tell stories, to capture intimate moments, fragments of life, and weave them into something larger than the sum of their parts. My guest today is Mohamed El Zayat, an internationally acclaimed film director whose work asks us to look closer. From People of Egypt, which captured the diversity and contradictions of a nation, to his award-winning film, Lonesome Traveler. Mohamed has built a body of work that refuses to flatten people into categories. Instead, he uses every tool at his disposal: the discipline of advertising, the intimacy of communication, and at times the whimsical, gravity-defying logic of surrealism, to tell stories that linger. In 2023, he became the first Egyptian and only the second director from the region to win the prestigious d&ad Yellow Pencil in direction. But beyond the recognition, his journey is about something deeper, using storytelling not just to sell or persuade, but to reveal what's often overlooked. His films aren't simply stories you watch. They're experiences that ask you to pause, reflect, and sometimes see yourself in the face of a stranger. Rooted yet expansive, his work often carries contradictions: lightness and gravity, humor and sorrow, held together in the same frame. But beneath it all is the same drive, to make us feel and to make us see. In this conversation, we explore what compels someone to tell stories, how communication itself can be a vessel for meaning, and why some images, no matter how whimsical or absurd, carry a truth that stays with us long after the credits roll. Mohamed, or Zayat, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here.
Wow, very glad to be here, and what an intro. I feel so important.
You are important.
No, this is such a, thank you very much. This is an amazing, I'm really out of words.
You know, before, when I was prepping for this specific conversation, I took a look at your work, and you and I actually met on set. We were working together. There was a production we were working on, and it was incredible to go through your portfolio of work, because I forgot how talented you are.
Thank you. Okay.
I mean that in the best way possible.
Right.
You have an incredible body of work, mashallah alaik. And I think especially as someone who has been working in the communications industry, you, or at least I, have a tendency to get quite jaded with the work that I see, because advertising is all about persuasion. But your work is very much rooted in something deeper. And that's kind of where I want to start. So this is a question I usually ask people at the very beginning. What do we need to know about the context of your life to set the stage for the conversation we're going to have? What do you want to share with us first?
Okay. First of all, thank you, Tani, for saying it that way and putting it this way. But also, you need to remember something. We didn't get along on that set.
I was hoping you would avoid that, but okay. We did not. We did not. No.
But I mean, it turned out amazing, actually, and we became friends, and here we are. And the context of my life into that is, I don't know really which part I would like to say about that, because I really care about the storytelling part. I know everybody says storytelling is an overused word. I don't like it. I don't like the word storytelling when you're talking about direction in general. But I think it has to do with liking to tell certain types of stories in general. I'm also a musician, you know that. So I think the fact that you can express whatever you like or whatever story you want to tell in whichever form is the context here for me. I don't think that either direction, writing, or music is enough or alone a form. But if we want to talk about personally how that got me here, I don't know. I don't think I have an answer for that. I don't think I have a specific answer for how I ended up being here, other than the fact that this is always something that I liked to do. I was always, for example, my mother is an amazing storyteller. She's never worked in the arts at all. She's a banker, always has been a banker, super achieved one, and so on. But she tells stories like no one else. And if she talks, like, you cannot stop. So I think that this is some form of perspective. And then some other members of my family, whom I will not mention, are terrible storytellers. So no matter how interesting the story they're saying, you're just gonna sit there and be bored to your mind. And my mom, even if she has like a very uninteresting story, she will tell it in such a way that's so gripping. I don't think I thought about what I'm saying right now before I said it. It just happened as we go. I think that's just the memory that I have of what made me want to tell stories. But of course, I don't want to go into the normal of watching films since I was a kid, since forever, and liking films and liking how films are said and the type of films that I liked that were not really like what most of the people around me liked and so on. But I don't know if that answers your question or I'm just rambling. I have no idea.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, the reason why I ask you to set the context of your story is it also sets the stage for how much you're willing to share. And I think because I'm your friend, I'm in a position of privilege right now to also kind of remind you that at least what I find so interesting about your story is that you didn't have a linear trajectory into this industry. You were someone who started in the communication industry, you were working in agencies, and it wasn't until you were in your 30s, when you were at a stage where you had already built a name for yourself in the industry, where you decided to pivot and pursue filmmaking. You got your master's in New York, and that in itself, I mean, for someone to take a step like that is quite bold. You left the Middle East, you went to New York. Can you talk to us a little bit about what drove you to do that? Because for a lot of people, especially in the creative industry, I mean, that's an investment. That's an investment away from the career that you had spent at least a decade building.
True. Actually, that's an amazing... That also makes me reflect on something else, is that I did not have a linear trajectory as a child either. I actually went to a French school in Egypt, a very Catholic school, and then when I was in 10th grade, we moved to Tunisia, and I finished an entirely different kind of life. So I started being exposed to things that I had no idea existed, and it was such an international community in Tunisia back then, and then moved back to Egypt, then went to Boston. So I have actually been moving the whole time, and so it was not an alien idea for me to just suddenly decide to drop all that and pivot. But I originally, before going to New York and all that, I wanted to be a musician.
Oh, wow.
I went to Boston to study music.
Okay.
That was the original plan. I never wanted to make films. I loved films. I loved writing, and I was a creative director. I was an associate before I went to New York in terms of title. But I was writing based. I was not art based. But when I first went and studied music, I decided that I don't want to do that for a living at all. Music is going to be my own hobby that's mine, that I'm going to keep to myself, and nobody's going to ever tell me how to do it. And that's why I've kept it like that, and I enjoy it so much. Because suddenly the kind of music that I wanted to play, I knew was not something that I'm not going to be able to ever make money out of, ever. Especially, I was into jazz and like funk and blues and rock and stuff like that in Egypt in the late 90s, early 2000s. Not really, like there's really no place for that if you want to live within a certain standard. So I decided this is something I want to keep for myself. But going back to that and working in creative advertising, which is what I studied, I was not satisfied with the creative industry, and I was not a very good creative. I was not a very good creative in terms of coming up with ideas. Oh. Like in my generation, if you look at my generation, people like Tamim, Megad Nassar, Ahmed Hussein, all these people, these people are my generation. So much better than I am as creatives. It's a fact. They come up with better ideas. I may present better than some of them, but I can definitely build on stories, and that's even in my writing. That's the strength that I have. So when I decided to leave advertising and go study film, I was not planning to do it as a master's. I went first to do like an 8-week intro to film, and I fell in love with it. I quit the moment I was there. I was making a lot of money. I was making a big name for myself in Egypt back then. And then I decided to go there and just study film. So I did my master's, which was 2 years. And then I moved back. I did my second year in LA, and then I moved back to New York. And then in New York, I started working. It was not very easy to get a job in film in New York as an Egyptian with really no films under your belt. So I worked in different departments. I worked in electric, I worked in sound, I worked in all of them as of course, very entry level. I even worked as a PA, as an AD. I was a terrible AD. And then I did that for 3 more years while I was working on my feature to come back to Egypt and do it.
Wow.
That was the plan. And I was supposed to move back to Egypt. And actually, I did move back to Egypt January 1st, 2011. So January 1st, we all know what happened on January 25th. And I was broke.
Wow.
So the plan was not to go back to advertising. The plan was to do that feature. And I had signed with a pretty big company. It's Yusuf Shaheen's company, actually. It's Masr Alamaya, that's its name. And that was the film I was going to do. And that was, actually, I did the writing workshop with Sundance and Rawi in collaboration. And then the Egyptian Revolution happened and I was broke.
Wow.
And the film stopped. So I had to move back into becoming a creative again. And there was still a spot for me, which was great. But nobody wanted me to direct my ads. That's the thing.
Interesting. Why?
Because they thought, okay, you're a creative. Why don't we get another director and you're just going to supervise him? And like, you know, and already there was a fad that some older creatives had done, like maybe 3 or 4 before me had done it, like Omar Hilal, Hamdallah, Ali, Alawi, and Tamer Mahdi. These are the only 5 that did it before me. So it was like, it's not going to be the career path. You're not going to be a creative, then a director. So I did go and study and I did my master's and nobody cared. So then I started directing some ads and I forced myself into it. And then I got my first award and then I quit. And from there on, I've been working as a director. And the film has always been what I wanted to do. And not that I don't like advertising, I really do. But I like you said, a certain type of narrative. I don't like certain ads. I don't like to do certain ads. There are other ads that I really like. And I choose very much. I have the luxury of choosing the kind of ads I would do.
I agree. I mean, there's definitely a theme with the work that you have done. But I'm curious, why do you think, and this is a problem that I feel like a lot of young creatives don't face as much now, this idea of being a director. طبعاً, in an age of content now, it's completely different. But at the time, in the early 2000s, it was something that was quite gate-kept in the industry. It was a very small group of people that, you know, honed that title. And I'm curious, why do you think that was?
I have a theory for that. Well, a part of it has to do also already with the medium. Okay? If we're going to talk about film, before going to creative. Because we shot everything on film. And not everybody had access to film. So it wasn't very easy to become a director. So that's one part. Being a creative, the system, the industry itself was built on something completely different than what it is now. And I'm going to talk about Egypt specifically. Because Egypt was very industrialized in the way advertising had been before Hamdallah came and changed everything, basically. So you had a very specific way ads were done. They were very P&G, like our jokes were not our own. Even though Egypt like is a place that has its own culture, and all our ads looked very foreign. Like you had like the typical Egyptian woman with like green eyes in a you know like an ad for some detergent that's supposed to be taking place in some rural area in Egypt, and everything looked like very fake, and everything looked like it's done by non-Egyptians for Egyptians. It looks very Orientalist, and I don't mean that in a political way at all. I'm just saying that was the industry. It was either a song or an ad that looked foreign. Until at a certain point, and in order to go up that ladder, it was very corporate. So to become a creative, it was very, I'm talking about also the people before me. I'm not talking about my generation. My generation changed that, or the generation before me. Then the generation before me, which is Hamdallah, Ali, and Omar, and these people, led by Hamdallah, I think, decided, no, we're going to do local ads that look local, that are funny, that and so on and so forth. And from there on, the scene boomed. And then it was very selective who's going to stay and nobody had access to that. But then after we had that boom for a while, clients and in the market started becoming very difficult. They started seeing that creatives are doing ads for themselves, not necessarily for the brand. So working in a multinational agency as a creative, even if you have the best ideas, started getting killed day in, day out, except for 1 or 2. So boutique agencies started happening, and directors started, and creative directors started becoming directors. And when they did, like I did, and that's my generation, we started having so much power. I used to work in an agency. I was a creative director. I'd go present to a client, and he would completely slash my ideas into 20. And if I go into a PPM as a director, he has so much respect for me. I'm the same guy. And when that happened, a new generation of creatives was not born. They weren't taught. Like my generation has been taught by an older generation, and that generation has been taught by another one. But then you had a gap where you had a generation that has not been taught by anyone. And then suddenly they saw that actually the golden nugget is becoming a director. So they don't want to even be good creatives. So at my time, none of the directors that were creatives were anything less than a creative director. Today you can have a copywriter that turns into a director or a senior copywriter because that's the end goal for them. So that's how I see it.
Which I find quite interesting because if you think about it, especially now when I look at hiring, I mean, whether it's the Gen Zs or the millennials or whatever you want to call it, but young people that are entering the industry see agency as a starting point into this world of creation. And they've adopted the title of director thinking that that's, the core aspect that, that's gonna help you protect your idea. But there's so much around that. There's so much to the team that actually executes an idea, but what they're fighting for is preserving the essence of their idea. So what I find interesting is, why do you think there's such a need for people to retain their ideas? Why is there this push towards everyone wanting to become a director, someone who owns their own content, someone who's trying to say something? Because I feel like it's speaking to something bigger that's happening in our region.
Okay. I'm not sure that everyone who wants to become a director has something to say. I believe that some of them do. But I believe that a lot of them like, the aura around being a director. In ads. In film, it's different. But again, Egypt has been through so many different layers of everything that it's nuts. But when I go and look, for example, today to places like Saudi Arabia or I would say namely Saudi Arabia, there are some voices that have suddenly appeared that nobody had any idea they had voice, even though they appeared way before, like when they started Tilbes Hadasha and all that, and maybe they were catering to Saudi only, but people in the industry had seen that. I feel the line or the gap between what is original, what works for us, and what is commercial and what is ours have been very blurred. So I'm not sure. This is why, for example, for me, telling certain types of stories may be a bit on the nostalgic end that might not be necessarily true. They look very realistic, but they might not be in any way translating what's happening today, because maybe I don't like what's happening today. But I don't know if people put that kind of thought when they decide to turn into directors in the field in Egypt right now. But the whole idea of trying to retain their ideas and trying to do what they think is right is a very basic reaction to clients pushing them into making do more of the same that has already succeeded before.
Yeah.
And that is something that is very boring, because the first person that suggested an idea, for example, let's go back to Hamdallah. Hamdallah was the first guy who joked in ads in Egypt. Humor. He's the first one who started doing the type of humor that we have today. The first client that got this idea told him, this is never going to fly. Who would want to watch that? And then suddenly, once it worked, same with the song. Songs had stopped in Egypt until 2011. Then Moby Neal did an ad with this guy called Ahmed Abdallah called عشان لازم نكون مع بعض. Ahmed Hussein was the creative. And then suddenly everybody's making a song ever since. The brief is a song now.
Yeah.
Like,
literally, I've read briefs where literally we want a song.
Yes. No, not a song. It is going to be a song. It is going to be with either A or B or C. And we want, I don't know who to direct it. Okay, so you have on the other side some people that believe that they can be the next new trend, or not even, they don't even need to be a trend, but they want to do something different because all ads look the same.
Yeah, I agree.
And they do. And
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to this idea of wanting to replicate. But then I think back to, what is the intention behind wanting to replicate? What is the intention behind being so, quote unquote, protective of doing things a specific way? I think because we are a region that is in transition of trying to figure out what we are today, which, translates into also what does original mean? Because I think that also when we talk about original, we lean on nostalgia. We lean on what was. And I see that. True. I see that in so many Arab stories. I see that in content that's generated and celebrated. It's leaning on a previous generation versus what we see today. Because what we see today is literally being defined. And I think because of so much turmoil and insecurity and kind of decolonizing ourselves, we're still trying to figure it out. Which takes me to something that I saw in one of your pieces. It was a quote that you had at the beginning of the film. I like to call it a film. I can't call it commercial. It's too beautiful. This for people of Egypt.
Yeah, it's a brain Islam.
The quote was, "The essential idea is not in knowing people, but in truly seeing them." And I feel like when we talk about this idea, this fight to, own your idea, be the director in your story, fight for that, be in this space, want to be relevant, it goes back to this idea of being seen. And what's interesting is that in this film that you directed, you showed us so many different sides of what Egypt is, that goes beyond the stereotype, that goes beyond the glitz and glamour, that also goes beyond the less privileged side. And it's incredible. It's layered. And as someone who's not Egyptian, it spoke to me. I understood it. I felt it. So I'm curious, what did this piece of work teach you about Egypt? And as an Egyptian, how did you feel about it?
Okay. This is one of my favorite pieces, obviously, because, well, first of all, that's one of the privileges of being a director and getting, to do kind of whatever you want and selling it, and having someone who can finance that. So already I went to places in Egypt that I would have never been. I went everywhere. And the prep for this film was like a month. We did a month of Recce.
Wow.
A month of Recce, and we went all the way from complete north to complete south. Reached all the way to Aswan, all the way to Dumyat, from the Mediterranean to Sudan. Everywhere. Passed by everything. Seen so many. Of course, I would have loved so much more time. And the fact that the film is kind of vignettes, that you're seeing moments that are created, that's kind of still scratching the surface. Had I had more time, would have been an even deeper and better film, I think. I think this is perfect for a short film like that. You just get, it's kind of like a trailer of what Egypt is made of, but it's not really, it doesn't go deep into any of the stories. What it taught me is that there's still so much, we are focused on, we have so tunnel visioned. Everything is happening in Cairo, and if somebody's going nuts, they go to Alexandria, and that's basically it. And even now, more and more stories are happening inside gated communities. It's like there's so much out there. Of course, it's not an easy thing to shoot something. It's very difficult. And of course, going to places that are not used to cameras in a place like Egypt is not the safest thing to do. It was a nightmare to produce this film. But got to see some amazing people in places, and most of the people in this film are not cast. They're just people who live there. And you just stay long enough to get them to just be themselves, and you just roll and you just stay with them, and then you ask them to keep doing the same. You don't even direct them. You're like a fly on a wall. That was an amazing thing. That was actually an amazing thing as a director, to be able to do that, to just take a back seat. It's like, there's nothing I can tell these people that's going to make them more themselves than what they are. I just need to make them feel comfortable. So that was the whole idea. I stayed long enough to make them feel comfortable. But there's no piece of direction. I'm not going to tell a guy, this is how you're going to hold the stick. I don't know how to hold the stick, but I know that this looks right. So it's like kind of like a BS detector that stays there. It's like, yeah, okay, this guy knows I'm a director, and I'm seeing something new, so he's trying to impress me. I'm not interested. This woman back there is real. Yeah. And that's the biggest learning, by the way, for me in this film. It's not, I've seen a lot of different parts of Egypt, not that much, of course, but different parts of Egypt. But taking that back seat and just putting your ego aside and just letting things roll, and of course you try to do it as aesthetically nice as possible, and also I was shooting it with a foreigner, so it's also with an eye of a non-Egyptian. Interesting. Yeah.
And what was that experience like?
It was amazing. He's one of my favorite DPs. His name is Dushan Hussar. He's amazing. I shot with him four of my projects, four of my favorite projects. He's so smooth. He's such an amazing camera operator. We actually met on Vimeo.
Oh, wow.
Like he had a piece on Vimeo that I loved, and I was just started following him, and then we started talking, and then I brought him to Egypt for one of the projects, and then from there on, we've been working a lot together on projects. He's an amazing camera operator. He really knows how to feel the moment. We have an amazing line of communication. He lights with nothing, but he was a vegetarian, and that did not work for him at all in Upper Egypt.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, imagine Upper Egypt trying to explain to someone that, first of all, this guy's a foreigner. Two, he does not eat meat. He's like, why? Is he sick? No, he's against, animal cruelty.
Well, yeah. It's so funny because even when you share these types of anecdotes, it goes back to me questioning what this idea of originality really is. And even the way that you talk about trying to capture this shot, it kind of very clearly shows me the difference in showing honesty versus showing accuracy. And I feel like when we think about the way we portray ourselves, whether it's in film or in commercials or even in content, we're so focused on this idea of accurately portraying what it is today, which kind of pigeonholes us into a specific stereotype, versus capturing something so much more honest that is universal. And I think that's what I love about this film. And that's why at least it meant something to me. You know what I mean?
I love that you said that, because when I was saying at the beginning about how people say about storytelling and directors, and people keep telling me, like in the region, I am a very good storyteller, and everybody talks about me that way, and it's an amazing thing. And I don't think that storytelling is what they mean, because I think every director is a storyteller. I think I'm honest. And I think, and I don't mean that I'm honest meaning that I'm a good person. I mean I'm honest meaning I have a BS detector and I know what works for that emotion at that moment. Even if I can't find it straight away, I try to stay as honest as possible. I mean, of course, I've done some commercials that are not that at all. I have commercials that are choreographed with sets that are turning around and all that. It's not honest. It's a visual aesthetic and it's fun and it has its own type of fun. But in the type of films that are being called honest, like People of Egypt or Lonesome Traveler or these, I think the strength is their honesty. It's not their master storytelling. There's no crazy camera movements. There's no out of this world light. It's all very subtle, but the moments are, even if, like Lonesome Traveler's story of a guy who's traveling with his family and his friends that are waiting for him. It's a very basic story. But these moments put together make you feel something. And I think this is the magic of film to me, of storytelling to me, is trying to get to that.
I agree.
And sometimes it's doing the opposite of that, going so over the top and doing something that is so not that. And that's the part when you were talking about surrealism or about this. This in itself has an amazing appeal as well, and sometimes
100%.
mixing both.
100%. بالعكس, and I would argue that the whimsy and the playfulness of being able to tell a story in that over-the-top way, in a way that almost is a farce or sarcastic or whatever it is you want to call it. It's a play on the reality of life that is so absurd. I feel like sometimes there's honesty in that.
Absolutely.
There's honesty in showing me something that is so unbelievably over-the-top and absurd that I can't even imagine to be true, but like I get it. I get what it's trying to tell me. And I think, again, that goes back to the way that you tell the story.
That's kind of Kafka's bread and butter, right? That area you're talking about.
Yeah,
that's that's Kafka all along.
طب how do you train yourself to see beyond the surface? Because look, this isn't about complimenting you. This is a skill set. And what's interesting about the way that you started this conversation is you talked about yourself as someone who was not bound to one place. You grew up in different countries. You speak different languages. So did that play a part in the way that you kind of seek the truth or try to portray that honesty?
There are two parts. And of course, living with different people, with different nationalities, with different languages, even the way languages are constructed tell you a lot about the people themselves. Being able to deal with people who don't come from your small village, and small village can be a huge metropolis or just a small village, in itself makes you more open to seeing people, I think. That's one part. And I think that in itself, it gives you like some emotional agility. You deal with different people from different countries with different backgrounds and different cultures. And then you learn to adapt, or you decide to become, just on your own and not deal with them. And I think this living in places where there are people from different cultures and they bring their cultures together definitely helps in being able to detect honesty. That's one part. The second part has to do with filmmaking itself. It's a process. Of course, the first stuff that I've done was terrible. Like my first short film was like a cry of trying to show how much of a director I am, and it was terrible. Like it's so humiliating. Like watching it today, it's like, oh my god, I'm such
Don't
a director.
Don't hold back. Don't hold back. Go for it.
And actually, that's what I did. I did not hold back in anything. I had a camera movement for no reason. Like, let's track in and zoom out at the same time because the guy's looking at his watch. It's like there's no motivation for anything and all that. And then once you get all that out of your system as a person, you sit there and you're like, okay, so what drives some people? To me, what drives me is the story. What is interesting to me is the story. How can I stay honest to the story, or how can I stay loyal to the story? Some other people, it's aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's visual aesthetic. They don't care at all about the story. They care about how it looks. That's another way. But to me, the way I see it is first the exposure, dealing with different people, reading, watching, all that, and then technically get all the alpha director out of your system.
Yeah.
There are a lot of shots you want to make, you want to try them, do all that, and then just come back to the basics. Maybe all you need is just a still shot.
Yeah. I actually want to delve a little bit deeper in this because I find this interesting. And I'm talking specifically filmmaking, especially because you are a creative that started in the advertising industry where the way that you were trained was rooted in this idea of persuasion. So when you say that I wanted to put everything on the table, I think that comes also from this place of I want to showcase everything I have to offer. And I think that's something that a lot of creatives can relate to. So does one have to go through the doing the embarrassing work to get there? Or like, how do you get from a place where you were trained a specific way to a place where you are able to be more authentic in the way that you tell your story?
I believe that everyone has to go through that except maybe Paul Thomas Anderson. His first film, he was like, 24, and he did Boogie Nights. So, I mean, he really had nothing to prove to like anyone. But other than that, I think, us mere mortals, we need to go through that. You need to get it out of your system because you don't know what's in your system. See, that's the thing. Back then when I was making this short film, shooting it on 35 mil, back when I was in New York, back to Cairo, shooting a film that's so authentic and stuff, I thought I was like Tarantino, you know? I thought like every shot when I was saying cut, I was like, yeah, it's in the bag, you know? So that's the thing. You don't know you're there unless you're out of it. And then you go look back and you're like, shit, that was terrible. So you try to just, you know, it's a process. It's not wrong. It's like, it's the same if you write. The first thing you're going to write is going to be terrible. And then even if you're an amazing writer, your first draft is going to be terrible. And then your second draft is going to be better. If you have the time to work on yourself before you put your first project out there, do that. But it's very counterintuitive because you're going to be your own assessment.
Yeah.
It's going to be very difficult.
100%.
And you're never going to produce anything. Part of doing stuff is just putting them out there and learning from them, or being very stubborn about it and just holding on to that crap. You know?
100%. I also feel like, look, there's something to be said about you need to be put in situations where you're working with other people, not just to learn from the exact craft that you want to focus on, but to learn how to work as a collective, as a team. I think there's something a little bit dangerous about this idea of a creative isolating himself or herself from community, because the greatest work happens when you're working as a collective in an ecosystem that supports your projects. And I think that's something that not enough of us talk about, because it's always about the sexy director, the sexy DOP, the writer, or the person with the idea. And those are the roles that people chase, thinking that it's about that, but it's about so much more than that.
True. At the end, as a director, you actually make choices, brief these people, but every one of these people is better than you at what they're doing. Everyone. I mean, the DP is actually the gaffer can light 20 times better than you. Actually, the second one, the best boy is better than you. The sound guy is better than you at sound. The costume designer is better than you. Costume, the art director, production designer is better than you, and has better taste than you. So the whole idea is for you to, and that's something that actually Tarantino had said, it's the idea is to have a vision, not to actually execute that vision. You need to get people to execute that vision for you. So basically you need to realize how it's about choices. It's about, okay, I want this kind of world and I need to build it that way, or I see it that way, and then we see how that way is going to be made. But you're not going to go and build your own set. It's not going to happen. Maybe you want from time to time to operate your camera. That's cute, but
it's not realistic.
It's not. I mean, for some people it is. Some people are very talented camera operators. Some directors are, and that's okay. But that's not what makes a director at all.
Yeah.
Of course, the known picture is the director that's standing behind the camera and saying cut. That's not, or looking in the eyepiece. You know, that's not really what happens. Some directors never look at the camera. Never. They're just sitting there looking at their actors. They're just not even, it's the DP's work. We agreed how the shot is going to be. I'm not going to even look at the monitor.
Yeah, I've actually heard stories of directors that are like that.
Yeah. Some directors don't allow monitors on set.
Wow.
They don't. It's like, we agreed, me and the DP, that's what we're going to shoot. And he just wants to stay with his actors. He's right next to the camera looking at them. Another director is terrible with actors and he hates them. And to him, they are just objects and they should do what's written. And he just sits on the monitor and looks and then repeats. And he's like, I don't like the light in the back. That's another type of director. Could be very good director as well. But I mean...
You also would get a different output, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of my favorite movies that I feel is a masterpiece for so many reasons, Cinema Paradiso.
Of course, yes.
I love it, and I was just watching it the other day. You yourself have been working on a variety of different projects, but specifically a script that has taken you years to put together.
True.
And I'm curious, do you think film has the power to become a form of almost collective memory that helps us remember not just the events that happened at a specific time, but what an era felt like? What writing something like this during, for example, the Arab Springs, this is a story or this is a film that captures that time. Do you think that movies have an ability to do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if I'm going to talk about Egyptian directors, for example, me as a person who has lived in, I was born in the 80s, right? And I grew up in the 90s. But my memory of the 90s is 100% four major Egyptian directors. It's their view of Cairo in the 90s. It's Mohamed Khan, it's Sharif Arafat, it's Atif Taib. It's these people. You just sit and you watch films and you're like, maybe this is not fully my memory, but this is how I remember the 90s, and this is always going to be how I'm going to remember the 90s. 100%. And these are people that had a point of view about the city they live in, and in a certain era, and it was such a point of view. It was not an objective, it was a very subjective point of view. Each one of them saw Cairo in a very different way. But they all saw Cairo, and this is part of my collective memory at least, and I can say that it's definitely that. It's definitely, and that's a problem I feel in films today in Egypt, is that I don't feel that anyone has a point of view about the city anymore. I haven't seen that lately. I haven't seen a film where I was like, wow, this is a person who has a point of view on the city. I feel that people try to avoid the city. This is why I really like people of Egypt, because I have a point of view on the country. From how I see it, might be romanticized. Of course, sometimes if I panned left, I would have had a terrible building that looked terrible and would have screwed up my frame. But this is how I choose to see what my country is made of today. And that's a point of view, right?
Yeah.
I feel that in films, and even though I passed your question, which is that I think, the answer to your question is yes, of course. Of course it is. But that idea of people not having a point of view about their city, like for example, if you take Scorsese, he has such a point of view about New York. I mean, you cannot say Scorsese and not say New York.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Spike Lee. He has a very, very specific point of view about Brooklyn, and he sees Brooklyn, it's a Spike Lee. And, I love that. I love directors who have a point of view to the surround or to where they're from. I love that, and I feel we like that here.
Yeah, but also I feel like you're so on point, and it goes back to what you said earlier. At the end of the day, when we look at creatives today, it's so much more than just a skill set. Skill sets can be learned, but having something to say sometimes doesn't even require the right skill set. There are people that don't necessarily go through the traditional routes of working in the same industry or getting a degree in it or whatever. The skills can be learned later, but having something to say, having a point of view, I feel like that's the magic. That's the thing that should be honed and invested in. I'm curious, you talk about Egypt as kind of this غير إنه أنت you're Egyptian, aside from you just being Egyptian, but it's a big part of your story. It's a big part of the way you talk about your future and your career. And I'm curious, when it comes to your identity, especially because, mashallah, you've been recognized within Egypt, do you feel like you carry any sort of burden around, you're supposed to represent it a specific way? And is your identity very rooted in Egypt alone? Or are there other parts of yourself that have made up who you are today?
That's a very convoluted question. There's like four questions.
It's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Mesh, I'm onto you. Just letting you know. I see that there are four. Of course, Egypt is, of course, I've lived in different places, and of course I've been affected by other places I lived in, like Tunisia or like New York. And Tunisia has been, I lived there when I was from 15 to 18, so it's a very important age. And I can very much relate to Tunisia, to Tunis in general, and I even love their accent, and I love speaking Tunisian and all that. Same thing with New York. I lived there for 5 years in my late 20s, which were also very defining. But for some reason, whenever I come back to anything, it's always Egypt. Any story that I want to tell has to do with Egypt. Now, burden of representing and all that is a different story that I'm not sure that there is a correct answer to that. I don't know. We're so different. I mean, Egypt, the idea of having one Egypt, or I feel that a lot of people, a lot of Arabs and specifically Egyptians, have this idea of how Egypt needs to be represented by people who, for example, like Mohamed Salah. So Egyptians want Mohamed Salah to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
And to them, that's the representation. That's the representation of what Egypt should be in their minds. And then you have others that think that what Mohamed Salah is doing is perfect, and that's how Egypt should be represented from their minds. So at the end, being whoever you are, I think that burden should not be part of your equation. Because if I'm a good director, does that make Egypt a better place? If I'm a bad director, does that make Egypt a bad place? That whole idea to me just feels like you're taking people and you're putting them in a place where it's impossible. Egypt is so much bigger than me and my stupid films and ads or whatever. Egypt will live on. I will be this one guy. Like what this? So Yusuf Shaheen is the most important Egyptian director who has ever lived. Does his film represent what Egypt is, or it doesn't? Is it good for Egypt? Is it bad for Egypt? Does it insult Egypt? Does it make Egypt an ex-colony? Does it make Egypt? It's impossible to carry that weight and try to represent, because you're always going to disappoint.
Yeah.
No matter how. So if it's, again, and if you put these things into perspective while you're working, your work is not going to be honest, because you're still trying to do something that is going to please the majority from your point of view. And your story should be just your story, I think. Yeah. From your point of view, people will love it. Some people will hate it. Some people will think you're terrible. Some people will insult you. And that's how it has become. And people are very, they're very subjective and emotional about their point of view, especially on social media, in wanting you to do what they think they should have done. And that's just...
It's unfair.
It's so unfair.
It's unfair on multiple levels. And I do think that putting that on people that are considered talented or icons or whatever it may be, it can become a burden. And it isn't something that should define what you do. But I'm so glad you brought up the example of Mo Salah, because even while you were speaking, I was thinking, imagine being him and the way that he gets ripped apart if, he doesn't do what the majority want. But also, why are people so in love with him? And I think it goes back to this idea of what he represents.
Of course.
And he represents us being seen.
Of course.
He represents us having a foot in a place that, doesn't view us a specific way, but gives us something to be proud of.
True.
And I feel like it's those things that we cling on to when we look at talent in the region. And I do think there's something beautiful and important there, because I don't think it's the work that we're going to be attached to. I don't think people are going to remember his goals, how many goals he had. Okay, maybe fanatics will, but it's not about the goals that he had. It's about what he represented. And that's what, khalas, it's going to go down in history, and know what he meant to Egypt was beyond what he did as a profession. And I think even when I think about directors and actors, again, there are actors, like one of my favorite musicians, who's Egyptian, Abdul Halim Hafiz. There are maybe 2 films that I know front and back. I don't know his entire, body of work. But there's something that he represents to me as an Arab that I take with me wherever I go. It goes beyond the actual work. I think that's where that convoluted question came from.
No, because I get that too. Whenever I'm not a football guy at all, you know that. But I mean, I'm so proud of Salah.
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with his journey. I have nothing to do with his success, but I'm so proud of him.
Of course, we all are.
That's
because of what he represents.
And that's amazing. That's a lovely thing. But if Salah decides to deal in things in a certain way, because I see the negatives of that when you come and look at actors, for example, in Egypt. Again, a lot of actors, because they are so afraid of stirring the water, because they know very well that people are going to judge them for whatever decisions they make, in roles they take, they become versions of themselves, and they don't take so many roles that could be much more interesting.
I agree 100%.
And this kills me. So they become influencers.
100% you're right, but I think this goes back to I don't know how to say in English, but we as a society have a lot of issues to deal with. We're obsessed with how we're going to be perceived. And I know that to be a fact, because when I look at how we glorify the choices that Arabs outside of the region make in their careers, for example, actors that are Arab, but they're Western-based actors, they make decisions that maybe a regional actor doesn't have the luxury to make in terms of, how daring or bold they choose to be on camera. And we glorify it, we celebrate it, we repost it, we love it. But do we give the same grace to someone from here? No, they get ripped apart. But I feel like that's a bias that we have to work on, unfortunately, that we've inherited. Because again, we are a region and an identity that is still in progress. It's in transition. We're kind of stuck, and it feels like it's lasted a lot longer than it should have. But I feel like we're still in that, and it's still, I don't know. Does that make sense?
It's the spirit of having, yeah, of course. It's a spirit. I mean, these types of reactions only reaffirm the fact that we've been colonized.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like, I'm trying to prove to you that I am
worthy.
Exactly. Me needing to prove. It's like something that keeps being said in Egypt is "Manzarna يقدم العالم."
Yes.
This is something that I don't like that line.
Me either.
مال العالم بينا.
Yeah. What will people say? That's the
But that's the same
fear.
concept. If you take it on a smaller level, what are people going to say? People are going to say either way. I mean, regardless. I mean, probably the only person. Let's take legends to the max. Kulthum. There's nothing bigger than Kulthum. Even Kulthum, there are some people that say negative stuff about her.
There are people that say negative stuff about religious figures.
No, of course. But Kulthum is kind of like in that, just like pre-divinity phase where like you cannot say that you don't like Kulthum in Egypt. I mean, up until maybe 10, 15 years ago. Maybe today it's a bit looser, but you could not. There's nothing wrong with Kulthum. Nothing. Yet, but that's still very unfair to Kulthum.
Yeah.
I don't know how she would have felt on her own. But yeah, that's a very colonized spirit of trying to make sure that you are perfect, even though you're not. I mean, it's a very being very hard on yourself also, I think.
100%. But if 100 years from now, or 20 years from now, you were to stumble across one of your films, what do you hope people would feel or understand about people today? Especially because you're in the process of shooting your first film.
My feature film does not happen today. My feature film happens in the 90s, which is something that's very close to what you were saying, is that honing on what used to be before. But there is a reason for that. When you see it, you will understand. But it is about things that have, okay. The thing about my film that I care about the most, and I think is the reason why I'm making it, is something that is very prevalent today. It's not very far from what we're saying. My film is about lying, okay? And I think that in our culture, especially in Egypt again, lying has become such a part of our identity, and I don't mean it in a negative way at all. I mean, for example, if I don't want to hurt you, I will tell you probably not the truth in order not to hurt you. And this is what my film is about. It's about people that are trying to shelter the people that they love by lying to them because they know that the truth is so harsh. And it's still lying, but it does not come from a bad place. Our impeccable sense of humor in Egypt comes from being able to lie. Our even the way when you pass by the street and say hello to someone in the street, they will ask if they're eating, they're going to ask you to join. Of course, they don't want you to join their food, but they will. It's part of who we are. And I think this idea of lying, I romanticized it in the film very much, and I don't mean to take a vice like that and just make it something good. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. But the whole idea of not being able to say the truth is the most preoccupying idea that I have to say about today, and that's why my film is about that.
What do you think would happen to us as people if we weren't able to make films, publish books, tell stories? What would happen to us?
If we can't?
If we didn't have that anymore?
Well, I mean, AI is going to make sure that we don't. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I think it's going to really suck. I don't think it's possible, really. Not because of anything, because anything we know about the history is because somebody wrote something about something. So I think that would be like, and I don't also want to say it in a philosophical way, but that would be the end of, like, everything we know about anything that has happened because somebody decided to tell the story. So I don't see how he would stop that. I mean, at least document it, you know? I don't think it's, even if it's not in an art form, like the art form we're talking about now, like directing or writing or music or any form of self-expression, at least as a form of documentation, I don't think it's possible to, I mean, how are you going to refer to anything? How are you going to know anything? Like how are you going to know you were here? How you don't know anything before, you know, the Egyptians and the Iraqis started, you know, writing stuff down. Before that, you know nothing.
Yeah.
What do you know? Absolutely nothing.
I love that. We have a tradition on this show where we end the conversation by asking you to ask me a question or give me something to consider. So, Zayat, what would you like to ask me? What would you like me to consider?
I would like you to consider, given how long I've known you right now and seeing how passionate you are about this, I would like to consider to actually make your own short film. I know you're writing a film, I know you're writing a book, I know. But I want you to direct it. I don't know if you've ever thought about that. We never talked about it. But you have such a specific point of view and an emotional one about things that I think you if you write something and somebody else directs it, you would probably kill them. So
that comes from our history.
I think you really need to actually take charge of your story and just do it. I think this is something you should consider because your point of view, you have such a point of view on things, and that's what directing is, by the way. It's having a point of view on things. So if you write something and then you're just going to let it here for some other person to just take that point of view and build on it, I don't think it's going to be yours as much as you want it to be. So I would tell you to consider directing a short.
Wow. Coming from you, I'm very flattered that you even asked me to consider that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I appreciate that.
I mean, you flattered me a lot, but that was not flattery, really. I really believe that.
Thank you. Zayat, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
You gave me a lot to consider.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Where can our audience connect with you if they are interested in, one, finding out more about your work? I'll definitely I'll provide some links for that. But if they also want to reach out to you?
I can leave my email, I think.
Okay,
sure.
Perfect. Khalas, email done. That's the best way.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
To all our listeners, as always, thank you for the privilege of your time. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Zayat told me that he wasn't aware that my podcast was on all these channels, although it's on every piece of communication out there. Anyways, whatever platform you're listening to this on, please do subscribe, as it does help us reach a wider audience. It helps us develop the content and the engagement from you guys, the comments. I love hearing it. I actually do read it and I try to incorporate it in the conversations that we have. So thank you once again for listening, and I hope you found something to consider.